So let's go through them one by one. We'll start with Duke. Duke basketball beat Louisville. And if there is a concern for Duke, right, and I make no mistake about it, the AP poll just got updated. They're up to number 4 in the country. They haven't been in the top 5 since the beginning of last season. So they're impressing people. Their talent pops. If there is a concern, and I say this with like a weird amount of, I understand how ridiculous it sounds. They might be depending on Cooper Flagg too much. And the reason why I say I understand the ridiculousness of it is, yeah, if you have the projected number 1 overall pick, why would you not depend on that guy a lot? It's if I had Adrian Peterson in 2008, I'm probably going to hand the ball to him a bunch of times. How is that a bad thing? Well, here's the thing. Going into their game against Louisville, Cooper Flagg was leading the team in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. No matter how special he is, I don't think that's the way to go about it. Now, Malik Brown, one of their transfers, did take over the steals lead when he picked up 3 steals against Louisville, but Cooper Flagg is right behind him, second on the team. So he leads the team right now in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks, and is hot on the heels of the steals leader. I think Tyrese Proctor should be their assist leader. I think Kamen Malawash should be their rebounding and blocks leader. You might even say someone like Kon Knipple should be the points leader. Because they're elite talents too. They're all 5 stars too. They're all hoping to play in the NBA too. They might be lottery picks too. Right? And if that's what they do and they're elite talents, then I don't know, maybe catch them in one thing. John Shire, after the Louisville game, because Cooper Flagg did get in a little bit of foul trouble, talked about players stepping up when Flagg was in that foul trouble.
Complete trust in Mason to come in that moment. And the value of our team is we have more than 5 guys that can play, more than 5 guys that can even start. And Mason came in. Con really stepped up in that moment. I thought Tyrese and Sion just kept us steady. And obviously I mentioned the plays already with Malik. But this team is way more than just one player. It's way more than just a couple players. Before the game, ironically, we talked about the depth of our team. Part of our goal was just to wear on them. They've had a lot of injuries, and so they don't have the benefit of playing as deep as probably they would like to. And that was a goal for us, and I thought down the stretch we were physically more ready just because of the depth.
They have depth. They have talent in depth. I do think at times for stretches they just go, Cooper will take care of it. And when in the regular season, guess what? Cooper will take care of it. What do you have? 20, 12, and 3. Seems like he has that every single game. But in there has to be an understanding that to win 6 games, which is what you have to do to win a national title, he's going to have an off day. I went back and looked at it just because this is the patron saint of freshmen that lead their teams to national championships. Carmelo Anthony, back in whatever it was, 03 with Syracuse. In the second round of the NCAA tournament, he went 5 for 16 from the field, had 13 points. And Syracuse was still able to beat a 22-win Oklahoma State team featuring future NBA players because Hakeem Warwick and Jerry McNamara and some of his teammates stepped up. There's going to be that moment for Duke, and I think they're going to want to have practiced it a few times before they get to that particular game. But we're nitpicking there. They're the number 4 team in the country. Now, because UNC fans love when you go from kind of praising Duke to talking about UNC not being as crisp, we'll make that transition over to UNC sneaking by Georgia Tech. I want to have a trust tree moment. Trust tree.
Okay.
Right, just me and UNC fans talking here.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like that falling thing where you're like the catching
like
game.
Fall?
Yeah.
Go ahead, fall. I'll catch you.
Right.
We can do a trust fall just to prove that I'm trustworthy, and then I'll ask you this question. How close are you to tapping that panic button if you're a UNC basketball fan? I don't even know if this is true, but I saw a meme online that said in Norway, when someone says like, hey, how's it going? It's a common refrain to say up and not crying. That's like whatever it translates to. Like, how are you doing? Hey, I'm up and I'm not crying.
Interesting.
I think that's where UNC basketball fans are right now. Like they're awake, They're not crying, but that's it. You aren't happy. You aren't good. Like, hey, how's it going? You're not like, hey, it's going great.
Yeah,
right?
I'm breathing.
You're not attacking the day with enthusiasm. You're just like, no, I'm up and I am not crying. They've lost to all 3 ranked teams they've played. They lost to Michigan State in a non-conference game. They have 5 wins, but they come against Elon, American, Hawaii, Dayton, and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech picked to finish 12th in the ACC in the preseason. And the Dayton and Georgia Tech wins came down to the wire. The Dayton win needed a wild comeback, and Georgia Tech, you had to make the free throws down the stretch. Hubert Davis was asked after the game if UNC saw the response from the team that he wanted to see in the win.
Well, I think our guys, when I came in the locker room after the game, I told them I was really proud of them. I think it's very difficult, very hard to win a game. I think it's very difficult and hard to win a conference game. And so, and I even told them before the game that playing here, playing at this level is difficult and hard. And so you have to find the joy and enjoyment of how hard it is to individually and as a team to be successful at this level.
Yeah, I hear you. But you have the defending John Wooden Award winner in R.J. Davis for the best shooting guard in the country. You have the defending ACC Player of the Year in R.J. Davis. You have more talent than – you have Seth Trimble, who was one of my favorite players to watch when he got in the game last year for UNC. You have 2 of the top, 12 recruits in the country in Ian Jackson and Drake Powell. How concerned are you? You've played 20 – I actually did the math here. 9 games of your regular season schedule, that's 29%. You're creeping up on a third of your season already donezo. R.J. Davis is shooting 24% from 3. Last season, he shot 39.8 on nearly the same volume. I'm getting closer to the point, and I've said this – there's receipts of me saying it weeks ago, where I'm not going to be concerned about UNC on a short sample size, right? You play 4 games, you don't shoot well. I'm not going to be yelling and screaming, right? You could win the batting title in baseball going 0 for your first 12 at-bats because everybody's going to go 0 for at some point in time. It's all flying. You'll have time to make it up, but there comes a point where it's like, no, you're too far into the season now. If R.J. Davis is shooting less than 25% from 3 a third of the way into the season, does that not get you a little, like maybe you're not smashing the panic button, but you are finding where it is? You're making sure you know how to? Georgia Tech is a solid program. Damon Stoudemire, the coach there, Bayan Dongo, one of their best players, like they'll upset some teams this year. But UNC is a program that shouldn't be the one you catch. They caught him last year, but that alone should have your attention. Like I'm a little concerned about UNC basketball this season. Thus concerned about ACC basketball because they have to be a flag bearer. They have to be out there up front making things happen. NC State beat Florida State in overtime. Let's go ahead and open up the phone lines, 919-860-5326. Sound off on whatever you want. Could be basketball, could be UNC coaching search. Bill Belichick making comments as we speak about his potential desire to be the UNC coach. Could be the Panthers, could be the Canes, whatever you want to talk about. 919-860-5326.
Maybe even UNC's basketball coach, because I know some fans are a little tired of Davis.
I think if you offered Belichick the lacrosse coaching role,
yeah,
he might take that over football.
Yes.
I don't know if he knows anything about basketball. Again, 919-860-5326 if you want to call in. While some of you do or don't call in, I'll break down the NC State Florida State game. NC State beat Florida State in overtime. That's a good win, right? You open ACC play, Florida State's a good program, you win the game. But I actually think the news is better than that because they also found out who their dudes are going to be this season, right? They found out who are the people they're going to lean on in big moments. Dontrez Styles and Marcus Hill both went for 20+, but it's the overtime where I learned the extra. Marcus Hill and Dontrez Styles were the only 2 players with made field goals in the overtime period, and they won the overtime period by 10. Hill had 8 points, including 4 made free throws. Dontrez had 5 points, including the 3 that gave them the lead. And Jaden Taylor made a free throw. That's it. That's it. This is a team that's been looking for who their main character is going to be. And when I say main character, I mean when the other team scores 8 straight points, 2 threes and 2 free throws, and your 4-point lead's now a 4-point deficit, and you just need to stop the bleeding, who is coach calling a play for? We didn't know who that was at the beginning of the year. Through many of their non-conference games, we didn't know who that was. It's Styles and Hill. After that win over Florida State, it's Styles and Hill. Dean from Rocky Mount is on the call-in line. You can be as well. We've opened up the lines for whatever you want to talk about. 919-860-5326. Dean in Rocky Mount wants to talk NC State basketball. How appropriate. Dean, thank you for calling in. Go ahead and talk State.
I think you're a mind reader, Tim, because I was going to talk about Marcus Hill and Dontrez Styles. And earlier when I asked my question about wide receiver drops, you brought up Xavier Legette, which is exactly what I was going to talk about. But it's been a wild week, and it's been a wild 2 weeks, really, if you think about it, going back to the Feast Week tournaments. But they were playing around on Saturday. They had me thinking, well, are they going to lose this? Because Florida State this year, the ACC's reputation, there's not, many high-quality games, and that's one of those games you look at would probably be marked down as a bad loss. So for a while I'm thinking, man, our tournament hope's going to end in December, but they were able to get it together and ended up getting it on right.
I appreciate the call, and great minds think alike, so we'll continue mind melding here. We'll let you go, and I'll respond to everything you just said there. I have way too much respect for Leonard Hamilton, the head coach of Florida State, to ever call Florida State like not a good win or a bad loss. Even if they don't have the NBA prospects they've had recently, like they're going to be a tough win all the time. And they went into last night's game 7-2 with at least one of their losses against a ranked opponent. I think they lost to Florida. So Florida State's always going to be a solid team, middle of the pack at worst, as long as Leonard Hamilton is there. But also, I mean, you're right. The NC State team, they for lack of a better term, they play with their food a little bit. They play to the level of their competition a little bit, and it was obvious someone needed to make a kind of big play, and it ended up being Styles and Hill being the most comfortable doing it. There's like last year's NC State run, and I know everybody is, if you're a State fan, you're never going to get bored talking about it. If you're anyone else, you're probably like, we get it. They made the Final Four last year. DJ Burns and DJ Horn on that roster are not easy guys to replace. And that's from a scoring standpoint, also from a personality standpoint. Like DJ Burns commanded a room. I don't know if I've said it on this show yet. And by the way, the call-in lines will remain open, 919-860-5326. But Victoria, others from our station, we get the opportunities to go to these ACC tip-off and kickoff events, which are like the media opening days for the basketball season and football season. And one thing I always note, right, the last segment we do from Charlotte, which is where they take place, after we've talked to coaches, we've talked to players, we've gotten all the insight, we've observed everything, is I always make note of who commanded the room. And like there's some you predict. When Dabo Swinney walks into football media day, the buzz goes up in the room and everyone kind of looks. For better or worse, you can like him or hate him. It just happens. But there's usually 2 or 3 people that have a similar effect that I'm really surprised by. I remember going back 2 years to ACC kickoff when Riley Leonard, the quarterback of Duke, walked in. The whole place kind of buzzed and everybody looked at him and I went, really? Riley Leonard? Huh. And then that year, Duke, beat Clemson in the storm. They stormed the field and they were hosting game day and it became a thing. And I was like, look at that. In basketball, right? There's always, like, if there's a future lottery pick or something like that, that player is going to get certain buzz. When John Shire, Hubert Davis walks in, they're going to get a certain buzz. But DJ Burns of NC State at ACC tip-off last year walked in. You would have thought Elvis walked in. Like everybody noticed him. He had the sunglasses on. It was just one of those things. That's difficult to replace, right? Because DJ Burns wasn't just that walking into ACC kickoff or tip-off. He's also that walking into a locker room. He's also that walking into an away arena. He's also that walking into a pep rally. He's also so when you were on that team last year, you knew when you walked in, nobody was looking at you, right? Nobody was looking at you. I used to, again, I played college quarterback, and one of the funniest things that one of my quarterbacks coaches, my high school quarterback coach, he said, as the quarterback, you have 3 seconds where you can do anything you want. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the moment you let go of a deep ball, everyone in the entire arena, everyone in the entire stadium is watching the arc of that pass go down the field. He said, nobody is looking at you. And I was like, okay, so what do you mean? He's like, you want to jab a defensive lineman who's been hitting you all night? Do it then? No, they will never throw a flag, because even refs that are supposed to be watching you are watching the arc of the ball. And it's probably not the best advice from a high school coach to a high school football player, saying like, throw a deep ball and punch a guy in the face. But it is true. Like, when you let the ball go, even though you're the quarterback, nobody is watching you. That was the experience for a lot of NC State guys last year. You walk into the room, everybody's watching DJ Burns. So you can relax, right? You can chill. If you're Michael O'Connell, if you're Ben Middlebrooks, like, you're not the main attraction. This year, somebody has to be the main attraction other than DJ Burns. And Dontrez Styles and Marcus Hill seem the most capable. And in overtime, right, when the spotlight gets the brightest of an ACC game at home against a solid program in Florida State, against a good coach in Leonard Hamilton, those two guys scored all but 1 point in the overtime period, and they won that overtime period by 10. So I think yes, the win is big, don't get me wrong. But I'm going to add in that finding out who your dudes are might have been more important than even the win, or it at least made the win multiplied in I guess importance. And then lastly here quickly, Wake Forest also got the win. And this is later in my show, we kind of do something we call the Dean's List, where we highlight college players, just positive. Cam Hildreth is going to be one of mine. He had 22 and 10 in their win over Boston College, 22 points, 10 rebounds. The reason why he's going to be one of the guys I highlight is he played, and I say this in praise, like trash against Texas A&M, and they lost that game the previous game. And both Hildreth and Steve Forbes, the coach, said Forbes had to rip into him. After that game, got a mouthful, right? Got all kinds of crazy stuff. To respond with a 22-point, 10-rebound, lead the team to a victory over Boston College game after, as a senior, you get dressed down by your coach following a bad performance, that's how you respond. Like, that's... you want to put that on a motivational poster and show it to youth sports about, like, you can get yelled at by someone who cares about you, and you don't have to go into the tank. You don't have to say, I don't know why I didn't transfer. You don't have to call somebody and complain. You can actually, like, get back to work and improve and play better next game. So give Cam Hildreth a lot of credit there, and give Wake Forest a lot of credit for winning over Boston College, another team picked to finish near the bottom of that ACC.